thank you for this opportunity. I mean, this is something completely different. This is really out of my wheelhouse to talk about my coaching career. Primarily because you hear me in academic classes talking about different things, but not so much about coaching. Because I'm the only person in North Greenville that does what I do. I can't move, can I?
Not very much. You gotta.
Sorry, you guys don't
Briggs
need-
said start with that. A couple steps. This
Okay, I don't know. I'll move a little bit. I'll try to stay in one place. But, you know, it's a challenge being a full-time professor and a full-time volleyball coach. Primarily because I'm responsible to you guys, but I'm also responsible to my players. And sometimes I pass myself in the hallway. And I'm doing advising, and I think, okay, what am I gonna do in this test today, the lecture, and then, oh yeah, we gotta think about some strategy for practice tonight, watching film, trying to beat the opponent. And so there's some things that I do when I'm coaching that maximizes the ability for me to be a good coach. And over time, as I've gotten a little bit older, I've discovered it's really a great thing to delegate. It's to delegate to younger assistant coaches who you've trained and really know what you want to get done. I just tell them, go get it, and I sit back and I watch. I just tell people, I'm just here to look good. I'm here to stand here, cheer, and look good. That's what but there's a lot more to it than that, because I have segued into a full-time administrative coach. But a lot of you don't know much about my background, where I came from in the sport of volleyball. You know, when I came out of high school, I was a basketball player. And my sister was a volleyball coach at a little school in northern Arizona called Yavapai College. Nobody's ever seen of it, heard of it. It's in Prescott, Arizona. And I had to get out of Laredo. I didn't want to stay in Laredo, Texas, so I left, went back to Arizona, and then did 2 years in junior college. When I got to my junior college team, the average height on the team was about 6'6". And guys out of Los Angeles that were players of the year, that academically were a little deficient, so they ended up at Yavapai. And here's me. You know, I'm 6 foot tall and I weigh 160 pounds. Yeah, I was really slow. Good shooter. I still shoot it. So I was remember the guy in sports, the last guy on the bench they cheer for to put in? That was me. Put in Battenfield. We want, no. So I never got in games. But it didn't matter. But my sister, since she was a volleyball coach, threw me, I was living with, she and her husband at the time, they threw me a rule book and said, you're the referee. I said, the what? So I picked this rule book up and I started reading it. I'm like, this is kind of interesting. I started playing. I played recreation ball, but I started officiating junior college women's volleyball. And so at the end of that, I kind of got interested in it. Then I transferred back to the University of Texas, where I started playing on the men's club team there. My roommate was from California, and he played at Pepperdine for a year. He was a very good player. He taught me how to play the game, and I got hooked. And from there on, I look back to what I did to develop the coaching, the abilities that I had. Ever since I can remember, I was always the one out in the schoolyard organizing the teams. Okay, Campbell, you guys over there, we'll do this. I was always had the leadership ability. Even Little League, I was the one kind of doing this and doing that. But I think back on that now. When I was in high school, there was the city of Laredo had a elementary school citywide track competition. And so they went to the high schools and asked some of the athletes, hey, you guys want to coach elementary schools? So I got an elementary school. We went over there and I'm looking, I don't know anything about track. I don't. I can't run worth a darn. And so I was extremely slow. But I said, organize these kids. Okay, this kid can run really fast, short distances. I said, okay, you organize that. We finished third out of 30 elementary schools. Just from learning how to organize very, very quickly and watching kids and learning how to do that. So it was kind of a natural, I don't know whether, you always have the debate about leadership and coaching. Is it inborn or does it have to be developed?
Inborn.
Inborn, well, who knows? Yes, so there's a debate on that, about whether you do that or not. But my volleyball career really started when I was at the University of Texas. The men's club team was, we had just a couple of guys that played, but I was also the one that started the women's club team at Texas. My girlfriend at the time liked to play volleyball, so she was the one that got it going. And I was in college once.
Dr. B!
And so I coached that team. That team went on to win, many years later, 4 or 5 national club championships. But I was the one that helped start that team. I was one of my notes I put here at the top, the first ever king. I did a lot of first evers in my life. When I got to Texas, my sister and I went to Phoenix and got ratings for officiating. My sister had never officiated in her life. She was a PE major. So we go down there from these women. This was a long time ago before. This was right when the AIW was starting to come in. And I had officiated a lot. She got a national rating, I got a state rating. I'm like, okay, I understand what's going on here. So then I transferred to Texas. When they found out that I was the only man in the state of Texas with a rating, next thing you know, I've gone from recreation volleyball to the University of Texas versus Houston. And it was really, they threw me to the wolves, basically, but you had to handle it. That's how I put myself through college, was basically through officiating. But with the club team, I became the president of the team, I coached the team, I developed the skills of younger players. We started an extra team while I was there, coached those guys. Because the love of the game is such that you do things when you get a passion for a sport. I don't get paid that much to do North Greenville. I get paid very little. I'm the lowest paid coach in the United States at the Division I level, bar none, because I have another job. So the university doesn't see fit to compensate me for my full-time work, which is fine. I would do it anyway. But it'd be nice to get a little cracker here and there, a little things. But, and so you think about what spun off of the love of the game of volleyball with my journalism degree. Well, that led to the '84 Olympics, where I was assistant press venue. '88, I was a press attache for USA men and women's volleyball. In '96, I did production. A lot of you have heard these stories. But just a chance to go to the Olympics and participate in it was amazing. But I was around the best coaches in the world, period. And I wasn't involved with the coaching side, but I'm sitting there in the media section. I play volleyball, I coach volleyball. Who am I watching? I'm watching those guys. I watched Marv Dunphy in 1988. He was Pepperdine coach that played in our gym. And he and I but I watched the guy. How did he handle his players? How did he coach? How did he take the best player in the world, one of the best ever, and coach that guy? It's like coaching LeBron James. How do you do that? You gotta have a lot of respect for their ability, but you gotta know when to rein them in and tell them what you want them to do. That's a tough one. Because you get a superstar, one day you might have one of those. You might be a coach that gets one of the Zion Williamsons, and how are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle the egos? Those are some of the issues that you come up with. But one of the things that it was important that I really kind of left on the sideline was my faith. Faith was not something I was interested in. I was chasing the little G, the God. A little G was a little white ball. It was so important to me to do everything the sport of volleyball and I could do. And I did. There's not very many people that have accomplished all the different things that I did, but at what cost? At what sacrifice? And I met my wife and we got married. I moved to Florida and I came to know the Lord at a much older age. I was in my 30s. To finally get back to where I needed to be to stay focused on God and everything that I did rather than myself, that I invested in my volleyball career, and because that was, got me a lot of places, but it also got me fired. You guys heard my story about Texas A&M. You know what got me fired? The fact that I went to the U.S. Olympic Festival in Indianapolis, and I thought the football media guide was finished. Well, I get back, and we had a new boss, and the guy said, "No, this is terrible." And he and I got in a big argument about it, and I was fired because he didn't want to do things the way I did. But the reason that I left, because I was more interested in doing that than it was my job, which was working on publications at Texas A&M. That was kind of God's way of saying, "Nah, this is not what we have for you." But I look back on that now and I go, oh, that's why I didn't get to be the head SID for football at Texas A&M making $100,000 a year. So, but God has different plans for you. I never would have gotten to this point of teaching and coaching and doing the things that I've been dealing with you guys. Yes, ma'am.
Would you say that negative event led you to some positive change?
Oh my goodness.
Are we back to that again?
I'm telling you.
I got places to be.
Yes, it did.
Thank you.
Yes, it did. My career took a left-hand turn. I went from the possibility of being one of the top football SIDs in the United States to a startup program at the University of Texas at San Antonio with very little money. Complete left turn. But it was a progression. Again, first evers. It's one of my first evers. I was one of the first 3 full-time employees at the University of Texas at San Antonio in athletics. I was a sports information director. I was the marketing director. My first coaching gig, the UTSA. I was the very first women's volleyball coach at UT San Antonio, right here. I had 2 weeks to put a team together. And what they had basically done, the NCAA basically said to UTSA, you gotta add 3 more sports, like now. And this was in July of 1983. So they had, what'd they do? Well, they said, okay, you're gonna add men's and women's volleyball and rifle. And rifle was a sport that the ROTC was gonna do. And so, but they were gonna give the coaching job to a basketball coach. Now this basketball coach is one of those guys that played volleyball and PE, right? One of these. And I said, nah, you're not doing that. I'm not gonna let that happen to this university. So I said, I'll coach the team. For nothing. Did it for free. And it was probably one of the most frustrating things I've ever done in my life. Because well, I'm not gonna say that, but.
No, go ahead, Bobby.
No, I'm not gonna do that. Women are different. Period.
Period.
I'm gonna leave it right there. No, what are you laughing at?
Rachel.
Women are different. I'll tell you. Okay, here's the story. I hosted a tournament at UTSA, right? Now, I had 2 weeks to find players. 2 weeks before the semester began. Now, what are you gonna get? We had no scholarship money. So I put up flyers on campus that said, whoever had played high school volleyball, show up. I had 12 young ladies show up, and they were okay. But we were playing a Division I schedule. It wasn't like it is today. Young ladies are all 6'5". They're not like that today. So I put this team together, and we started coaching, started working. And we weren't very good. Well, we won 9 matches. We beat somebody, the teams that are already established. So I kind of figured, okay, I know what I'm doing with coaching. But here's this tournament. And it's in our gym. And we're playing this one team. I can't remember who it was. And we're playing terrible. And the next thing I know, these 2 young ladies are screaming at each other. And I'm like, my mouth just dropped. I'm like, what the heck? I didn't use that word. I used another one. But as soon as that match was over, I just yelled at them, said, everybody in the training room, right now. You know, if buddies watch me coach, they understand how I do that once in a while. So I went in there and I just closed it, slammed the door, and looked at them. I said, what the bleep is going on? Well, she won't set me the ball, and she won't, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're not supposed to do this. There's no crying in baseball. Come on. So I'm an X's and O person, right? I can teach you how to pass, how to set, how to hit, how to play a team concept, but I can't handle that. I didn't do drama very well. So I was like, hey, ooh. That's why I said women are different. The women are different. That was my 1 year coaching women's college volleyball. I wasn't there.
That's what I like coaching more after me, but that is.
But you can see I was.
The Lord blessed you with a daughter.
He did bless me with a daughter. She is a diva. That's a whole other deal. But you can see that was not something God did not cut me out to coach women's sports. It's just because that's the way that I don't know what it is. But I had a men's team at UTSA that I got to coach, started from scratch. By our 3rd season, we were the best team in the southern United States. All the hyphenated schools all had men's volleyball. Hardin-Simmons, Abilene Christian, Centenary, Arkansas Little Rock, Alabama Birmingham. Those were all it was a basketball league at the time, but we started men's volleyball. By 3rd year, we were the best team in the South. And then I retired, got out of that and moved to Florida. But the progression is such that when you're doing that, I never got paid, but it was for the love of the game. If you love something enough, you learn how to coach, you learn how to do the techniques, but you really invest yourself into your players, into their lives, no matter what they really do. Okay, then I moved to Florida. I kind of retired from volleyball. I got out, primarily because I'd gotten married, I had 2 children, a daughter and a son. And we had moved to Miami and went to the Olympics in 1996. And right after the Olympics was over, we moved to Miami. And I started a new job down there. I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do anything with sport of volleyball. But, you know me, I've kind of kept my hand in it a little bit. I worked out with the women's team at Barry University for a couple of years because they didn't have enough players until they had enough. Did a few things with ESPN. But for the most part, all I did from there, transitioning to Tallahassee, was coach my kids. Set up a net in the backyard and taught my son how to play. And so, but that was kind of for a number of years, it was that way. I actually retired from officiating in 1996, got out. I made a lot of money. I mean, now officials are making $500 a match, 3 out of 5, so I'm like, I'd like to be back in that game again. But I retired, I said, I never did it again. I had 2 national ratings. I was one of the best referees in the Southern United States. Because, you know, the Florida State coach loved me. Because she said her winning record with me on the stand was about 90%. And she said to me at the Olympics, she said, you wonder why we kept bringing you back. But I got out of that. It wasn't as important to me. But I came to North Greenville in 2007. I went over to the women's coach and said, can I help you? And she said, nah, I got it. And I'm like, okay. I said, whatever. She got fired 3 years later, and I'm like, okay, whatever you want to do. I offered my help. So I backed out. I said, I'm not doing anything with volleyball. What happened in 2013?
We got men's volleyball.
You're right. I found out from Mike Sepko that we were going to add a men's volleyball team at UTSA. And I'm like, who has more experience than me around here? Nobody. So I said, I went to Coach McDonald. I said, hey, I'd be interested. I think I can handle it. Well, you know who I'd clear it with? Who would I have to clear it with before I actually did that?
Your wife.
My wife. Corey's on it today. My wife. Because, you know, I told her, hey, this is an opportunity, because she knows how much I love the sport of volleyball. I love it. I mean, it's something that I've invested all my life in the sport. So I had to ask her, do you realize there's going to be bus trips and time in the gym and all that kind of stuff? She said, okay, that's what you want to do. Without that blessing, I would never have done this. I would not have done it. But once she did that, but the hardest part, that's what I told Dr. Briggs I was going to do. When you're doing a startup program, you got nothing. You got zero. You have no budget, no players. You don't have nets, shoes, equipment. You have nothing. So you have to have what's the P word?
Plan.
I have a plan. They hired me in October of 2013. By August of 2014, I had to have 12 to 14 guys on campus. And we got them from everywhere. I signed my last guy in July, 1 month before the season, our training was going to begin. I had 11 players. This guy was the 12th one. He was a 6'1" Hawaiian. Anybody ever, I don't know if you guys ever been around long enough to see Lou play, but he was the best Hawaiian I've ever seen play. And he could jump out of the building and hit the balls harder than McManaway. McManaway, I didn't know anything about sports. Nobody knew about volleyball at the time. The game had changed. The rules had changed. I didn't know anything about NCAA recruiting. I had no idea. Scholarships? I never had scholarships. How do you deal with that? So it was a whole new learning experience for me because most of the coaches in the Division I level never heard of me. I wasn't a coach. I was never in the coaching fraternity or the sorority. I was never one of those because it was from a different era. I was retired from 1996 to 2013. So that's 17 years of just kind of floating in and out of volleyball. Now all of a sudden I rematerialize on the scene. I had a lot of learning to do. I called one of my former players at UTSA. He ended up coaching at NC State, coaching the women's team at NC State. Really good coach. And I asked him, Brian, how do I build a team? He said, find a great setter and build around them. I said, okay. Kind of did that. And we had a guy for 3 years that was pretty decent. But that's basically what we did. We had to find players wherever we could get them. But now, in the last 3 months, the progression from that point to now, I've had probably 11 guys on this campus that were better than every player on the first team except for McManaway. And so we can now be selected, but that's the process. It's a slow process. It takes time. You have to understand what you're going to deal with, because there are a lot of challenges. The university starts screaming about, we need more players. I said, well, I need more money. Well, we don't have any money. Well, it's catch 22 here. I need more money to bring. I had another scholarship. I'd have 20 guys next year, real quick, because it's a decision between do you win or you just bring bodies in like Erskine does. Erskine has 22 volleyball players down there right now. I got 15, and we're going to beat them so bad next year. It's not even going to be funny. I hope so anyway. You never know. But so you sacrifice that, the challenges of dealing with scholarships. I mean, this is hard. Man, every coach at North Greenville goes through the same thing. We have all had the same conversation. We need more money. You don't have more money. Okay, how am I supposed to get this number? The nearest volleyball player that I can recruit that's any good is Jacksonville, Florida. It's at Jacksonville. In the local area, got a young man on campus right now. He's from Winston-Salem, about 2.5 hours. He's pretty good. Pretty good player. Charlotte, but other than that, Virginia, Florida, the closest areas for the level of men's volleyball player that we're at. And that's another thing. We're a Division I team. We're at the absolute highest level of our game. And so we have to recruit against UCLA, Penn State, Ohio State. And then, Pepperdine, I tell people, I'm never going to get people who are going to play on the national team here. But I get the ones that are the Brandon Bakers of the world from some random place like Connecticut, or Aaron Campbell. You guys have seen Aaron play. He's from New Hampshire. He don't play volleyball in New Hampshire. I saw this guy, I'm pretty good at identifying talent that I think we can develop. Aaron turned into one of the best opposites in Conference Carolina's history for the last couple years of his career. So, but you have to think, where do you find your resources? Just like an O&A lecture. But that's what I deal with every single day. But the hard part is juggling the time. Come in the morning and, I've got a lecture to prepare. Oh, by the way, I've still got 3 recruits to try to sign. Oh, by the way, so you have to be your time management has to be very, very coordinated. However you do it, that's one of the hardest things. Dealing with player issues. The way I handle it, I remember Gooch was in here about a month ago. The way I'm pretty good about delegating to my assistant coaches. The 3 guys that are my assistant coaches all played 4 years for me. They understand completely what I want. And if they, I just tell them, hey guys, this is what we need to get done. And I get out of the way. I'm a huge proponent of delegating to your assistants. Letting them do their job, don't micromanage. Matt McManaway is my #1 assistant for the last 3 years. He handles all the on-court coaching during practice. Aaron Campbell works with the opposites and the outsides. Jake Bulldog works with the setters. And I stand there and look at it. But I told the players last night, I'm watching every second. Are you developing the way that I want you to? Are your skills improving? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And that determines, who's going to start. Because we got a couple battles going on for a couple positions that could change, but that's what I'm watching for. I'm watching the overall concept. And most good head coaches, like a Nick Saban or somebody like that, they're not down on the field micromanaging the linebackers. They don't have time for that. I could, real simple. I've 48 years of volleyball. I think I know what I'm doing. And I've never been asked to speak at the NCAA convention because nobody knows who I am. That's all right. That's cool. That's fine. I'm new. I'm humble. I don't have to have those kind of accolades. I used to. I used to have a terrible ego a long time ago. I learned humility. When you come to God, you learn humility. Because it's not about me. I was telling somebody coming up the stairs, it's about my players and my coaches. And promoting this university. And when I started, nobody had ever heard of North Greenville. There's not one D1 team in the country that doesn't know who we are now. Because we beat Grand Canyon University, was ranked #10 in D1 back in March. This shocked the world. Nobody could believe that a little dinky school like us could go out there with, their volleyball budget's $500,000.
Can we get
$500,000 just for men's volleyball.
What is ours?
About 20,000. Not counting scholarships, it's about 20 grand.
What are we supposed to do with that? Some shoes and
Not a lot. You end up going to Tusculum rather than Ohio State. But, fundraising. You want to go on these big trips, lacrosse has done it. But it's part of the game. Fundraising was a big part of being a coach. You've got to go out and raise money if you want to have aspirations and things you want to do. I broke down some of the places we've been. Penn State, Ohio State twice, Princeton, to Lewis and Loyola Chicago. We went to Florida, Arizona. How many other teams here done that? Yeah, we're the only team. Because we can go play those as regular season matches. This makes sense for the football team to go to California. There's enough teams around here to do that. Men's volleyball, if you want to get some notoriety, you got to go play those teams. But I got to call those coaches up and say, hey, I'm this random coach from South Carolina. We want to come play your team. But over time, I've developed relationships with some of these coaches. And, done some things to try to help promote the program. For example, the first match, who was our first match against? It's against Pepperdine. Here. It was over, we played at the Upward Star Center and over there in the gym. And I invited our coaching staff, and the baseball guys asked Landon Powell about Pepperdine. Our coaching staff came and watched these guys, and their average height that year was about 6'8". The basketball coach was like, and they were good. These guys weren't just stiffs. These guys could jump and move. They were huge. And I got my little guys, we just kind of, but think about, I don't back down on stuff like that. I could care less. We had 1,500 people watching us in our very first match over at the Upward Star Center. I'm crazy enough to do stuff like that. But you guys know me. I wrote my note. Do your job with excellence. Shoot for the top, not halfway. You guys have been around me long enough to know that I don't do things half-ass. I do things, sorry.
We can't post the video.
Can't post a video. I don't care. I want you guys to understand you've got to work hard. Shoot for the top. Shoot for the best, no matter what you do. And that's what I do when I'm on the court. I act like I'm one of the best coaches in the country. I'm really not. But the aspirations are such that I want to be Ohio State. I want to be Penn State. I want my team to do that. And if people ask you, do you interested in those jobs? I say, heck no. I don't want to go places like that. What I want to do that for, I'm going to tail into my career. But the whole thing is all about developing my players, my coaches, and giving them the opportunity. Dealing with parents, oh my God. That is the absolute worst. To have a helicopter parent for a college athlete is the worst thing you have to deal with. I had to throw a player off the team because of a helicopter parent. It was probably the biggest mistake that I've ever made in my life. I had a real bad coaching hire our second season. I never should have hired this person, but the main thing about me was loyalty to that person. I allowed that person to stay in my program. I should have fired them in the first 2 weeks based on the control issues that they had. But I didn't. I stuck with it. I was a little lazy maybe. My wife would say, I should have fired her. I'm like, well, I didn't. And that person ended up getting a master's degree from North Greenville. Even though we had huge conflict the whole time, I stayed with it. And so that was probably a mistake because it caused a lot of problems for me and my family and the team. It almost drove us apart. But dealing with parents is something that, I had a parent come up to me when we were in Arizona. Where are you playing my son? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's Division I volleyball. Your son is not as good as my other players. But when you get confronted like that in front of other people, what do? Can't scream at them. Can't yell at them. You have to learn a little bit of diplomacy. How are you going to handle that? I've had this three times in my career here at North Greenville that's happened to me. Parents come up to me and criticize my coaching. I'm like, no, you don't do that. And I yelled at the players afterward. I said, in private, criticize in private. I said, how can you listen? You understand where you're at? Do you not know that you're not? Well, yeah, I know, coach. I'm like, well, tell your parents to shut up, sit down, and hold on, or whatever. And that's the most frustrating thing there is. But everybody has to deal with it, especially in this environment. Public schools, they're huge programs. You leave any time. But when you're in private school, it's a little bit more touchy-feely. So you have to be a little bit more aware of how you're going to deal with these problems and how to deal with them. Handling winning and losing. I mean, dealing with leadership that may or may not care about what you do. They kind of care, but they really don't have the vision to see what bigger programs could do. If I was the AD, I'd do things completely different for my program, but I'm selfish. Nobody know what tunnel vision is for coaches? Tunnel vision means you're right here. I see my team, I'm coaching my team, I want to win, but what about out here in the periphery? The budgets, the other teams, the other things going on. So you have to open up the tunnel and see what's outside. When you segue out of coaching into leadership. Because I put the blinders on sometimes with coaching. I'm like, my team is the most important one on campus. Forget soccer. That can't. It's a silly sport, they play with their feet. But get the point. And so, when you have to be a little protective of your players and your team. But you have to get outside the blinders to understand what the challenges leaders have here. Because, we're all budget crunched. We're all numbers driven. Because we're a tuition-driven institution. So you have to understand the challenges that they have and be supportive as best you can, even though you're driving for your own team. Some of the big moments of my career, obviously the Olympics. I cannot emphasize how big a deal it was for me to go to the Olympics. Something I dreamed about when I was really little. Watching the '64 Olympic Games and seeing volleyball in black and white. I'm like, that's an interesting sport. Never did I dream that I would see. My claim to fame is still, I am the only person that's a non-Olympic family member seeing the most Olympic volleyball matches in history. I can't see if that's true or not. But if you figure I was there in '84, I saw 53 volleyball matches in '84, Olympic volleyball matches. In '88, I saw probably 20-some. And then in '96, I saw another 30 or 40. That, other than coaches and people and players that are involved with the Olympic movement, who else had done that? I'm the only one. And that's probably other than fans, but how many fans can afford to see 53 volleyball matches in one Olympics? Not many. Not many. And so I think about that, but that's the thing I was blessed with, the ability to learn from the best. Learn from the best coaches. I walked into a meeting right before the gold medal match against the Russians in '88. The coaches were in there. I needed to talk to the coach about an interview. And there were 5 guys in there that had won 3 gold medals and had been involved at the highest levels of the sport of volleyball forever. The best coaches in the world were sitting in that room, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And so when you have that kind of opportunity to study what they do and how they handle players, their mannerisms, that's just one of the best things ever. Obviously, the Grand Canyon win was a big deal. Beating them, we beat them on March 6th. We played UC Irvine in the morning at noon. UC Irvine was ranked number 7. Their middle blockers were 6'11" and 7'1". The outside hitters were 6'8" and 6'7". Setter was 6'5". They were massive. Absolutely massive. And the guy didn't pull his starters. We scored 17, 18, and 20 on them. Not bad for a little dinky school. Then at 6:30 or 7:30, we played Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon was ranked number 10. They had a 6'9", opposite 6'8", and 6'6" middles, 6'6" outside. Huge players, best players in California, and all over the world. Their oppo was from Belgium. One of my philosophies of coaching, I don't recruit international players. I don't. The first year we did, we had a Canadian, he lasted 1 year and went home. Couldn't afford it. But my philosophy is such that why would I want to be involved with a sport with a bunch of guys from Greece, when they finish, they go home to Greece? I don't want to do that. And so my philosophy is I'm going to give scholarship money to guys that are going to finish, get their degree, and go give back to the sport in this country. And grow the game is the thing in the men's and boys volleyball. There's not that many boys teams around, but we've grown. There's a lot of boys and men that play in this area now. When I started here, there were 6 boys over and upward that played boys volleyball. Now it's grown. There's more college teams in this area than in Southern California. And that's important. When you look at a three-hour radius around here, when the HBCU schools come in 22, that's 8 more programs. There'll be more teams in this area for men's volleyball than any place in the United States. And I'm right on top of that and trying to continue to push that. Beating Barton, everybody was at that Barton match in 19, we beat them? You guys remember that one? We beat them in 5. Jackson had that overpass to beat them.
Yeah.
I think that is still, Grand Canyon was a big deal. I was probably as excited as I've ever been. I think that Barton match was the one that was kind of our signature. Because we had never beaten them before. That was the first time we beat them. We had just beaten Mount Olive the night before. So that was a big two. Other things, 20 players graduating. I've got 3 with master's degrees now in just 5-6 years. That's a lot. The coaching tree, some guy, George Mason did an interview. A lot of my players, especially the UTSA guys, 5 of them went on to coach high school volleyball. And 3 of them won state titles in the state of Texas. One A, Catholic schools, various different things. Brian Bunn went on to coach at NC State. He's running a club team in Texas now. And so I look back, and then McManaway, Silas Jenkins, Dustin King, they're all coaching high school volleyball now. So I feel like I got them an opportunity to play, which allowed them to get a job. Failures, I'm 0 for 3 on Hawaiians. I had 3 Hawaiians here, they've all gone home. 0 for 1 for California. Kate got homesick, got girlfriend and a brother in Phoenix, and I get it, you know, it's a long way. So I've had changed my recruiting focus on people from Arizona. I'm actually gonna sign a guy from Phoenix, you know, middle blocker from Phoenix, and I've got another 2 guys coming from Wisconsin in about 3 weeks. And I know, like, you guys understand how far this is? Oh, yeah, coach, we're okay. I'm like, it's one of the things you have to think about in the recruiting process. Are they okay with that? Because you don't want to get turnover.
Kids in the Midwest want to get out of the cold, so you're fine.
That's what they tell me. I want to get out of Wisconsin. They're up near Milwaukee somewhere, and it gets awful cold up there. But, so you can see that my career has been
I believe Wisconsin too.
kind of part-timey, but it's kind of full-timey. But I've invested a lot of my life into players, giving them the opportunity to play, teaching them about life, teaching them about the game. And that's the most important thing. So I've been in the game for 48 years. 48 years I've been involved in the sport of volleyball in some capacity. The retirement years, I kept my hand in it. I wasn't doing it actively, but coaching, this is my 7th season at North Greenville. So when we have the best team we've ever had. So your goal is to win conference. Well, we're in the top 4 2 years ago. We didn't get a chance to play last year. That was a big disappointment to us. Because we were on a roll coming off of Grand Canyon. We might have won the conference last year. The big if. But, so you see some of the things that, you've heard some different things today that you don't normally hear from me. Because you don't hear about my coaching story and why I coach and, you know, the different philosophies that I have. But my main philosophy is 4F. Faith, family, focus, and fun. Because it starts with faith. You wouldn't be at North Greenville if you didn't believe in faith. The family is building the culture. Starting something from scratch, you're going to have errors, you're going to put things together. The focus is the mental side. I'm on guys all the time about staying focused in games, and every coach that you've ever had says that. So it's got to be fun. And I tell parents, I tell recruits, if it's not fun, let's not do it. It's got to be fun. So, thanks for putting up with me. Something a little different. Anybody have any questions?
There's usually 3 that Dr. Briggs likes to ask. I can ask them
Sure.
real quick. Let's see. First one is, do you recommend grad school for assistant coaches or for young up-and-coming coaches?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can get your education paid for, why would you not do that? Why would you not do that? But there's always a debate. There's a guy named Pat Williams, who was the general manager of the Orlando Magic, that I lived real close to him when I lived in Orlando. And I see him jogging all the time. He came up to Florida State when I was in school, and he asked that very question. Do you continue right out of your undergraduate, or do you go work a little while, then go back? Well, there's two sides of the equation. If you continue right away, it's paid for. Is it an extension of the undergrad experience, or is it just something that really different? However, if you get out of school and start working, how hard is it to go back? It's pretty difficult because you get married, you have children, you have this and that. I started my master's degree when I was 36. I started my doctorate when I was 45. 45 years old. I was 49 when I graduated from Florida State. It was difficult because I was Mr. Mom. Got my kids up in the morning, took them to school, wrote papers, dropped my son off to the hospital with my wife. We tag teamed. We did that for 4 years. It was a huge sacrifice. And so, do you get some experience? Sometimes I used to advocate, go get a couple years of experience and then go back. Sometimes it's not that easy. So somebody offers you the opportunity to get a graduate assistant, do it. Get your degree, get it out of the way. But I always ask, how many do you want to do a doctorate? Not many. I said the same thing. I said absolutely the same thing when I was in Texas. I was going to be a big-time SID, make a lot of money. I was in the loop. I was around the top sports information people in the country. But we've got it at other plans. Great question.
The second one is, what do you look for when you hire assistant coaches? So what do you look for? In them?
Number one is loyalty. Loyalty. I kind of stole that one from Bobby Bowden after reading his book. If they don't believe in what you do, and they decide they're going to do it their own way, and I had that happen. I had an assistant coach that decided, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, I'm going to do it. Well, we had conflict all the time. All the time, because this person thought they knew more than me. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I allow assistant coaches to take a lot of leeway, but there's only, well, you gotta remain loyal to what my goal and my vision is. If you can't do that, you wanna supplant me, then we got a problem. And I did have a problem with that. I'll tell the story in private one day, maybe. Okay. Great question.
Let's see, and the last one is, how do you think young coaches should get involved in coaching life?
That?
Yeah, Coach Vetter, yeah.
Sorry. You guys coach high schools at all? Thank you. I know you guys, Nick was doing it, and a lot of the, Chris Inman. Find a place to coach. Get involved with somebody. Get involved with First Tee. You know, whatever you have to do. There's lots of kids out there who would love to have the expertise of the people in this room. And that's how you get jobs. You gotta stay, but the other thing is find a mentor. Find somebody that you admire, attach yourself to them, and volunteer, do whatever you have to do to get involved with that person. Somebody that you really admire. I mean, most of the people in the sports industry are not gonna say no to a student. They might, you know, some of the other type of people might. But don't be afraid to get out there and get experience at any level. Coach juniors, coach, you know, little kids, whatever it is. And then always be looking for opportunities to move up the coaching ladder. Because, you know, we had this discussion at ethics the other day, you know, with Brad and Dawson. Soccer has certifications and, you know, coaching requirements. They don't have it for volleyball. I mean, they have a lot of coaching opportunities. I'm like, the lady I worked with at the Olympics, she said, well, you need to go get these coaching certifications. And I'm like, coaching certifications? What do I need that for? I've been coaching for 40 years. But the game had changed. So I did need some learning. I had to learn from the other coaches in the league. You know, the coach at Barton was really good. He said, this is what we had the same thing your first year. They were over. I won 9 matches my first year. He won 0. And he's got way more scholarship money. But eventually we progressed up the scale by basically just finding people that can teach me the game. And, you know, that's why I lead on my assistants. They're coming out of club programs. They had great coaches. So my role is more of it as an administrator rather than a head coach.
That's good.
Any other questions? Thank y'all. Good to see you.
I have the yellow paper.
You might have to cut out
We have the yellow paper. Can you sign it?
before you
This?